Hello, and welcome to the class on describing graphs and charts in your presentations. This is, in this course, you remember that we are doing a lot of structuring and visual presentation for the development of your thinking skills and language awareness. And by this time, we have already done a lot of work. And today we will learn how to use charts and graphs that are so important for the rhetorical technique known as logos, when you need reasoning, facts, and other ideas on the topic. So at first, what is a figure or a table? We can talk about bar graphs, we can talk about line graphs and pie charts, only three of them today. You see that they, like pie charts, can compare bigger and smaller parts. Bar graphs, we can talk about the tendencies during some time. Let's start with a line graph. You see that we see here the tendencies, we see here the time period, and we see here the tendencies, and also we see here the line that shows what was going on. For this, we will talk about the period of time, and we will talk about different verbs, like different tendencies, such as go up, go down, grow steadily, and so on. So let's take this kind of a line graph, and you see that it illustrates the trends in music buying habits between 2011 and 2018, and it is given in the percentage from 60 to 0. We see that, so we, of course, we start with showing the main tendency. We give the overview. We see that both downloads and physical sales of music have steadily declined, while there was a sharp rise in people streaming music. We started with the overview of the tendencies, and then we can talk about each method in comparison to the other one. So for this, we use comparison and we compare them, talking about each tendency. Yeah? And we can say that streaming was not common at the beginning, while the majority was taken by downloads and CD purchases. And then we can talk about steady growth or the falling down of the tendency. We see that here we do need to use such vocabulary as the graph shows, the chart illustrates, and of course, we summarize the information after the whole chart is described. Here are the main verbs, and you will also get them in your task. They are on rising, increasing, growing, and we can talk about how they do it: dramatically, sharply, hugely, massively, sharp, steeply, and so on. And with all this, we can describe line graphs. And now let's look at the pie chart and how different it is from the line graph. The pie chart represents the parts of something. And usually in the pie chart, we start with the overview, but it is very important to use the language of approximation. We don't talk about 5%, we say 1 in 20, 10%, 1 in 10, and we use approximation techniques for describing the charts. For describing this chart, we can use, like we see here, 33% and 30, and we can talk about 1/3. So 19 up to 1/5, 14 up to 1/6, and approximation will really help you here. You see that, yeah, 32 is almost 1/3, nearly 1/2, approximately 3/4. With using this qualifiers, we can also talk about very, like, the other phrases that show very approximate number, like very small, minority, significant proportion. And after that, of course, we describe the chart, we overview it, and we can finally describe it. But you remember that we use not only the proportions that are shown in the chart, but we try to paraphrase it. So very often pie charts are presented in two, and they show how people spend time in, for example, this year or in the other year, what people bought, how people bought smartphones and tablets, or it can compare different, very different things, sales, periods of time, like tendencies, and so on. And advice here, of course, never talk about detailed figures, approximate them, don't repeat vocabulary, and talk about the tendencies. The bar chart, which is represented here, also will give you the comparison. You see here that we have the comparison, but it will present the time, and it will give you the percentage. For this, you can talk about, of course, you overview it, but you can talk about men and women either separately or in one paragraph comparing them. And you can talk about different numbers, or you can talk about tendencies. If you talk about numbers, you can say that 2,000 here compared to 6,000 here, it was like 3 times growth. Or you can compare them in each part of the period, and you can say that in 1992, the number of students studying engineering, or like the number of women in engineering, was 7 times lower than women compared to men, was 7 times lower. But in 2012, women were already constituting 1/2 of the people studying, not 1/3, yeah, 1/3 of the people studying engineering, and they were only 50%, the number of women was only 50% lower. And you can talk about increase and decrease. So the advice here is the same. Keywords, main ideas, noticeable things, and changes over time. And with this, you can talk about different tendencies. So the conclusion here, you may describe any kind of a graph if you can talk about numbers, about tendencies, and if you can compare them in if you can compare two parts of the graph. Of course, when you are doing the graph, you start asking the questions that are here in your screen. You can usually complete your talk with some conclusions. And good luck in describing the graphs, and remember that they're a very important part of your presentation and logos when you are not only in business, but in any kind of an industry which needs to learn more about the numbers. Thank you and bye-bye.